There is a very special book called as The Long Pilgrimage. The content of this book is the life and the teaching of a great person. People call him as Shivapuri Baba. This book was written by a person named 𝘂𝗶𝗹𝗹. Regarding the small description of the book, author had told that this book describes the life and the teachings of the Shivapuri Baba, one of the most remarkable men of our time. Here is a guide to living which is extraordinary in its simplicity, yet adaptable to any age or culture. A discipline which takes into account the needs of the body, development of the mind, and the enfoldment of the spirit in harmony. Shivapuri Baba was also named as Sri Govindananda Bharati, and this book, The Long Pilgrimage, came in collaboration with Thakurlal Manandhar. He helped 𝘂𝗶𝗹𝗹 a lot in coming up with this content. The book consists of the 6 chapters. The first chapter is having the title The Quest, where the general quest of the people are being answered. Then in the chapter 2 is the teaching and method which Shivapuri Baba described as something which can help human to live their life merrily and easily with certain purpose. Then the third chapter having the title called as The Right Life, which Shivapuri Baba had given to the people who came to meet him during his time. Then the fourth chapter consists of the 3 disciplines which are the ingredients of the right life. And the 5th chapter is the new lights on old teachings. And the 6th is the removal of doubts. Now we will go to the foreword being written for this book. Although foreword cannot be termed as the content of the book, but here foreword also consists of some vital information which could help us to know the teachings and to know Shivapuri Baba. The foreword is being written by the son of the co-author Thakurlal Manandhar. He writes, by bringing out a new edition published in Nepal, I am fulfilling the long unfulfilled wish of my father Thakurlal Manandhar to get Long Pilgrimage published in the Indian subcontinent. After his attempts to have it published in India in the 70s failed to materialize, the state of John Bennett got a paperback edition published by Turnstone Press in 1985. This economically priced edition did go on to fill to some extent the gap that came to persist, but the failure to publish further editions after 1985 only served to increase the demand worldwide. I feel certain that this edition, the first ever to be published in Nepal, where Shivapuri Baba lived for over 40 years, and from where he gave out most of his teachings, will go a long way towards satisfying many who have shown deep interest in his teaching, which he called the right life. This is a time when we all are witnessing a phenomenal rise of materialism and a rapid deterioration of the world in terms of moral order. Yet, ironically enough, at this very moment of time, the need for the dissemination of moral and spiritual values too is at its greatest. The Shivapuri Baba's teaching of right life is based on the eternal principles of Swadharma, which is being passed on to mankind from time immemorial. These principles have now been refreshingly told by a God-realized soul with its emphasis on human duty and human discipline. This alone, to my mind, would make his teaching at once unique and outstanding. Even though in the present day world there is no dearth of theories or paths in spirituality, still the three disciplines as enunciated by the Shivapuri Baba are not only practical, but they represent in essence also the most comprehensive teaching, as it encompasses all paths or approaches to God realization, transcending their narrow confines and limitations. The secret of the Shivapuri Baba's teaching, however, lies in the inherent practicality of the rock-like pillars of his three disciplines: the discipline of the body, the discipline of the mind, and the discipline of the spirit. And in the manner in which he places emphasis on living out these disciplines with an unfailing sense of duty. He laid equal emphasis on true knowledge, foundation on realization, making it distinct from knowledge which is merely acquired. Those of us who have been so fortunate as to have actually met him and sat at his feet understand why he spurned all attempts to mistake the knowledge so acquired, not founded on realization or experiences as real. The vitality of Shivapuri Baba's teaching, however, lies as much in the depth of fundamental values of right living as on its wonderful simplicity. Having personally carried the corrected manuscript back to J.G. Bennett in the summer of 1963 for its first publication in London by Hodder and Stoughton, and after not succeeding to bring out a subsequent edition from Bombay in the 70s, I am now feeling absolutely pleased to be able to bring out for worldwide distribution an edition published in Nepal, from where the Shivapuri Baba's teachings first originated. In this edition, I have made no attempts to change any of the texts of J.G. Bennett and Thakurlal Manandhar, and the book maintains its full originality. However, I am glad to be able to add a number of interesting pictures of the Shivapuri Baba from the black and white era, most of them taken by Thakurlal Mananda himself, who has captured the enlightened master in many of his moods. I have also included some of the photographs that I have taken myself in Banaras and Nepal while I was learning to be a photographer. Even as an amateur photographer, I would get so struck with awe by the radiance and the grandeur of his personality that I would sometimes turn a little nervous while picturing him. I would simply keep on gazing at the brilliant picture on the screen of the reflex camera, not knowing when to press the trigger. Such was the power of his presence. I have to thank Revered Sugata for allowing me to reproduce a portrait taken by him. Last of all, though by no means the least, I wish to express my gratitude to Ben Bennett and Hero Selwood, son and daughter of J.G. Bennett, respectively, for much help and guidance. I would also be failing in my duty if I did not thank them for securing from the estate of J.G. Bennett the permission for me to publish Long Pilgrimage for the first time in Nepal. With these words, we have reached towards the end of the foreword, and now we enter towards the preface of the book. When Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, India's beloved president and her most eminent philosopher, visited Nepal in the spring of 1956 for the coronation of King Mahendra, he was expected to go direct to the royal guest house, which had been specially prepared for him. Instead, he had no sooner alighted from his aircraft than he asked to be taken to the retreat of the Shivapuri Baba, then around 130 years old. After the usual greetings of civility, the following conversation took place between Shivapuri Baba and Radhakrishnan. Radhakrishnan asked that, "What is your teaching?" Shivapuri Baba replied that, "I teach 3 disciplines: spiritual discipline, moral discipline, and physical discipline." Shivapuri Radhakrishnan then replied that, "The whole truth in so few words?" Shivapuri Baba said, "Yes." Then turning to his entourage, Shivapuri Baba's current student Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan replied that, "The whole truth in so few words." Shivapuri Baba again replied, "Yes." Later, the Shivapuri Baba, speaking of his visit, said, "Then he explained my speech to the others for about 15 minutes in the most wonderful manner. Such a brilliant explanation I have never heard in my life. I myself envied his power of explanation." Shivapuri Baba said that Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan is a soldier of the Vedic literature which is rare in the world. Shivapuri Baba said that Radhakrishnan has no destructive nature. He has only constructive nature. He, at his heart, has got human love. He looks down upon nobody, no hatred for anybody. Shivapuri Baba said that when Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan came, he only joined palm and offered namaskar to me. But before he went, he placed his head upon my feet. Such a thing is most difficult for a man of his position. When I said I teach 3 disciplines, I saw feelings of shame and horror rise up in his face. Shame because for all his scholarship he had not understood what was at the bottom of life. And horror because after so long living in another belief, he feared that he was too old to change his way of life now. Let us go further in the preface. To write a book on the life and the teachings of such a man as the Shivapuri Baba, whom I met for the first time when he was already 135 years old, would be an act of unpardonable presumption, but for saving 2 factors. The first is that the Shivapuri Baba himself said that I ought to write about his teachings and saw the account of his life in manuscript before he died in January 1963. The second is that I have been privileged to receive from Mr. Thakurlal Manandhar, who has been his devotee for nearly 30 years, copies of notes made over this long period of talks with the Master. Mr. Manandhar has kindly consented to let his name be joined with mine on the title page of this book. I must, however, hasten to make it clear that the text remains my responsibility. The Shivapuri Baba told me to set out his teaching so that it would be understood as easily by Europeans as by Indians. That means a careful adaptation of terminology to avoid excessive use of the technical terms of Hindu philosophy as they occur in the Bhagavad Gita. I submitted the manuscript to Mr. Manandhar and he kindly made corrections wherever he felt that I was departing seriously from the intention of Shivapuri Baba. Nevertheless, much must remain as heard through my ears and understood with my obstinately Western heart and mind. The teaching of a man like the Shivapuri Baba doesn't take the form of a fixed doctrine. The same for all conditions of man and intended to remain forever unchanged. As he himself points out in one of the talks recorded in this book, the vitality of any teaching depends upon the combination of an unchanging foundation of truth and a constantly varying superstructure of ideas and methods. The foundation is right living Swadharma, which has always been and always will be demanded of man as a condition of his welfare in this life and beyond. The Shivapuri Baba does not leave the notion of right living in such general terms as to be applicable to almost any doctrine or code. He connects it specifically with the three disciplines of the body, mind, and spirit. The basic requirements of the three disciplines are the same for all people at all times and at all conditions of life. But their practical application varies from age to age, from nation to nation, from individual to individual, and even for the same individual under different conditions and at different times. It follows that everyone who has been privileged to receive guidance from a great sage like the Shivapuri Baba will have something different to report. I visited him on 2 occasions at an interval of 1 year. The second time he spoke differently. and gave me different advice from the first time. I hope that this means that I had assimilated what he told me on my first visit and was ready for stronger meat. If the same person hears differently at different times, how much more will this be the case for people of different race and religious formation, such as Mr. Manandhar and myself? The marvel is that we have been able to agree over the essentials, and I am deeply grateful for his understanding sympathy with me in a task that I could not hope to accomplish either to his satisfaction or my own. For 28 years, Thakurlal Manandhar regularly visited the saint once a week or more often if he could. He brought his sons to him and educated them under his advice. He gave all these years of devoted service as only a Hindu can give to his guru or master or spiritual preceptor. What could I, a foreign visitor who met the aged saint perhaps a dozen times, expect to make of his teaching? There is only one advantage I can claim. For nearly 50 years, I have been searching for the truth and have assiduously studied the spirituality of all the great traditions. Therefore, nothing that I heard was strange to me or surprising except the wonderful simplicity and practicality of his exposition. In a single conversation of half an hour, he could tell a visitor all that was necessary for the ordering of life and for the attainment of God realization. It doesn't follow that all was understood. He was always ready to resolve doubts and explain difficulties. But it usually transpired that doubts and difficulties were due to faulty attention on the part of the listener. If we could really hear what he had to say, we should have had no need to trouble him twice. His words were charged with the immense power of his being. He was a true saint who produced an immediate and uplifting effect on everyone who entered his presence. And this sort of effect cannot be conveyed in a book, and it would be foolish to try. It has always seemed to me that those who have attempted to convey the feelings they experienced in the presence of one of the great Indian saints have usually given the impression of a foolish sentimentality and exaggerated devotion to the person rather than understanding of his message. At this point, we are finishing the part 1 of the long pilgrimage book, which contains the teachings and the life of Shivapuri Baba. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for the further parts. May His presence guide you towards the 3 disciplines He suggested for all. Thank you so much.